Welcome to episode 243 of thenecronoma.com.
You know what's really scary? Book bans. Long a tool of authoritarians, book bans are a direct threat to our freedom to read. That's why Library Foundation SD, Brooklyn Public Library, and other partners across the country have launched Books Unbanned to fight this evil. This campaign makes frequently banned or challenged books available through a digital catalog to young people across the U.S., including states with increasing book bans. Like your local library, it's completely free to sign up. Want to learn more, including how you can help increase access to the books we love? Visit libraryfoundationsd.org.
Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003, offering a wide range of products for your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics. Officially licensed collections include titles like John Carpenter's The Thing, The Evil Dead, Creepshow, Jaws, the Halloween franchise, and so many more. Head on over to fright-rags.com. Make sure to sign up for their SMS and email newsletter to never miss a drop. Listeners get 10% off when they use the code NECRO10, all caps, at checkout. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And since this is a silent movie, today's a silent episode.
Oh wait, they can't read my cards, or no?
I guess not. I guess we'll have to do this with sound.
No, see, I already had the soundtrack of 4 minutes and 32 seconds set up for the soundtrack for the episode. So,
all right. Well, I am. I know Tony's going to correct me. I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast that you're listening to. And normally I'd have a joke, but I'm afraid that, I'd probably fall asleep while telling it, and it would predict something that would happen, but might not have happened. It's like pretending to be dressed as the dude, pretending to be the dude that's the other dude. So it would just come out weird. I mean, that.
Oh, man.
No, I got it.
All right, joining us today, Tony Parker is here. Welcome to the show, man.
Finally, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been wanting to come on here forever, and I'm ecstatic that I have an opportunity to be on here. So thank you.
Indeed. We literally wanted you on here like season 1. That was like 5 years ago now, but we finally got it to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Never do the math. That's why one of the things I've learned is never do that math.
I'm an English major for the same reason. You want to tell our listeners a bit about yourself and your new project and all your other good stuff?
Sure. My name is Tony Parker. I draw comics for a living. I absolutely love my job. I've been doing it for more years than I care to admit to. Again, don't do the math. I've been nominated for an Eisner for my lineup for the adaptation of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep from novel form to graphic novel form. It's an official adaptation. Lost an Eisner for Best New Series. Worked a lot of other stuff. I've worked for pretty much everybody. I'm also best known for graphic novel adaptations for video games for both Mass Effect and God of War, both official books, both incredibly fun to do. Done a lot of indie stuff as well. Worked for pretty much everybody. Right now, though, my book that I just wrapped up. I've actually got there are 3 pages left for the colorist to color, but then the book will be completely done.
Wow.
Is a book called Medusa. What if everything you know about Medusa is a lie? What if she were actually a hero who was not just cursed to be a Gorgon, but also cursed 2 other ways as well, where no heroics she ever does can ever be remembered. Ooh. And for her to return things back to the way they were before the monster attacked, she has to kill the monster. So and this book takes place in modern day. So it's kind of like a combination of Doctor Who and Wonder Woman, where she has been for thousands of years, for millennia, going out, doing the right thing, saving people, helping people out, because she was actually a hero. It's the right thing to do. She was cursed by the gods to only be remembered as a villain, because that's kind of the way the Greek gods would roll. And so I've got this The pitch is great. The colors on it by Tamara Bonvillain and letters by Taylor Esposito are great. They're both amazing. Stephanie Cook did an amazing job with the story editing. It's through Dark Horse. So my first ever written book is through one of the biggest comic publishers in the United States.
That's fantastic.
It's actually so it's huge with that, and it's going to look beautiful. And it was 80-page single volume. So you don't forget about like picking up issues 2, 3, and 4, or kind of collect them all. You get one complete story with that. And the fear is gone. I'm just excitement and elation at this point.
Awesome. So you said
you'd be happy.
Yeah.
This is the first one that you've written?
This is the first book this is the first published story I've ever written.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I did a 2-page or first fiction. I did a 2-page story about a sculptor in the 1908 World's Fair, person of color whose name eludes me now, but she was absolutely amazing and stunning, and more needs to be known about her, and she just did beautiful work. So I did a 2-page story for that, for an anthology, but that wasn't fiction. This is my first fiction story ever, and writing is hard. Mad respect for writers out there, because y'all make it look so easy.
No, man. I feel the same way when I look at your art. And we've talked about this many times where you'll post a picture and I think it's just amazing, mind blowing. And then you're like, you update it later and it's somehow even better. And you're like, man, it's still not what's in my head. And I'm like, that's how I feel about writing every single day, no matter how many drafts I do.
I've accepted we talked about this on pre-show, where it's like, we got to get rid of the concept of the universal genius, where everyone's like, oh, yeah, we can all do this. Like, Neil Gaiman has other people draw for him. It's okay for people. I mean, you have the occasional anomaly, like the Kyle Baker who does all the writing and the drawing. And a few other people out there, they're just absolutely brilliant. Like Colleen Duran will do that as well. But for the most part, it's like, we've got specific things we're good at, and that's okay. We got to get rid of that. Unless you're the absolute genius in all things, you're not a genius anymore. Now, I'm not saying I'm a genius. It's just more that it's cool that everyone has their skill sets, and that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. I like, even my son's into construction, right? And like when I watch him build stuff and paint it and like build a whole room, and he's talking about like the pipes in the walls and electric and shit. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, okay, cool. It's in there. It works.
That's English. I recognize that language.
Like, I know all of these as words. And
I'm learning context. Yay.
But I feel like everybody has that thing that they know really well. And I don't know, it's all fascinating to me because there's so much stuff I can't do that I'm impressed by anything people can do.
Yeah. Oh, same. The older I've gotten, the more respect I've gotten for other people's abilities and skill sets for things that I thought were banal and benign in the past, where it's like, no, this is difficult. It's that Dunning-Kruger thing where you don't realize how difficult it is because you are so removed from what the actual skill set is to do that.
Indeed. Well, awesome. Any other projects you want to talk about, or any other books you want to push? Or
I also have 2 creator-owned books I did with Alex DeCampi that are available through actually we'll have the links afterwards, but both Mayday and Brandenburg School for Boys are both available now. They're both pay as you go, and the website they're off of right now, if you look up Mayday with Tony Parker, you'll find that. It'll be the same place to get Brandenburg School. It's a 1970s Cold War spy books. Not the Bond type, but very much the actual hard, don't trust anyone, everyone is evil, everyone's out to get you type of spy. So not James Bond, much more the like 1970s spy movies as well, where it wasn't the nice, cheesy Roger Moore stuff. It was everyone mistrusts everyone and everyone is tired, but everyone will die if they let it for a moment kind of thing.
Beautiful.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So the almighty question, what made you pick Dr. Caligari here today?
The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is one of those movies that every time I forget how much I love it until I watch it again, because it is so groundbreaking for what it was. It still holds up well. And it's one of those movies you have to watch it as close to the original form as possible, because it was such a lightning in a ball of crafted movie that it works out great. And it's just it's spoiler alert, it's got a twist at the end. But the movie's also over 100 years old, so we've kind of gone outside that like 6-month barrier of avoiding spoilers.
We tend to talk spoilers on here either way.
I figured as much, but we'll get there when we get there.
Look, it's in the public domain, so
thankfully that's how I was able to watch it, because I tried to find it as a streaming service, and I found it streaming for free on Plex, but they only had the black and white version, so I had to go to YouTube to find the color, the tint of the hued version, because it does make a difference.
Nice.
But with that movie, it was just, visually stunning, stylistically amazing, executed so well. It is like the first full horror film, and is still a classic that all the other ones are judged by, and is the predecessor of so many of our classic horror films that we know and respect now that are more well known.
Absolutely.
That's why.
And I don't know how many directors I've seen quote this as one of the many influences in their lives, but it's a lot.
Yeah, I know Kurosawa did. He put it in one of his top 100 favorite top 100 favorite movies, and I don't blame him. And this is also for people listening. If you want to pause and take the 56 minutes to watch it before hearing all the analysis, come on back. But it's one of those things where the less you know about it, the better it is. It's truly one of those films where, as you're watching it, you're like, you don't exactly see what's coming until you get there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So welcome back.
This is like a TikTok. Go back and watch it and then listen to me.
Well, in that case, we're stealing your data as well. So there you go.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all social media. Who are we kidding?
I was going to say, that's everybody.
Remember when spyware was a term? Oh, no, they're taking our information. Yeah, well, I know. They're taking our information. Now get me funny. So, yes. 100-year-old movie. That's what we're talking about. Sorry. No, it was it's absolutely stunning, and the character designs are so wonderful with it that they've tried to update them, and they've tried to redo this movie multiple times, and never, it's like a Citizen Kane where you just don't.
Right.
It excels exactly the way it is, as it's supposed to be.
I always feel unless you have something really new to say with it, leave it alone. Like, I would really like a lot of these. I know why they don't, but I would like a lot of these studios to just do in-theater re-releases instead, and let people experience movies on the big screen. And I don't know. I think that would be way more interesting. Obviously, I'm not a great businessman, so
Thankfully, a lot of independent theaters do that all the time, and I love them for that.
I just wish it was more. I think there'd be something great about it being national at once, so everybody's talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that sort of happens, but I would love it on the big scale. Anyway, I forgot where I was going. Never mind.
No worries.
That's the show, everybody. Good day. Yes.
Thank you for coming back.
Then I will jump in here, then, James.
Fantastic.
Well, Tony, what you're talking about, or when you mentioned the aspect of the visuals, that's, I know people like to look at like silent movies and say, or at least with when we're talking about the visuals, they would make the argument of like it's all visuals, but that's not what I'm discussing, or for those of you who haven't seen the film, it's the aspect of they use special effects in this movie without really making you think about them being special effects, as far as the way that the landscapes are painted, the way that the fair happens. I'm sitting there like, holy shit, this is exactly what I would imagine somebody's dream, at least remembering their dream. How would it be? Nothing would be clear. Nothing would, nothing would make any sense. There wouldn't be anything linear. And I like the fact that, one, the use of space, the use of the special effects itself, it helps drive that story through to where, you're sitting there questioning, especially at the end, like, holy shit, what was actually real?
Exactly. Well,
what was real?
Everyone sit back, because this is where I get super chatty talky. So part of that was a very that was the after World War I. So we had the German economy was in shambles. It was broken. Everyone was broken. They had no real funds for that, but they still wanted to try and make movies. So they were incredibly limited by what they could do. So they were stuck with broken and painted on sets. So that was part of it, because they couldn't like do these large extravagant things. Part of it as well is the studio they filmed it at. The largest set that they could use was 6 meters by 6 meters.
Oh,
whoa!
So that was it. So that's when you look at everything's stuck in that size. And so they filmed with I think maybe one or two exceptions. The entire movie was filmed on set. So that's why we had everything back there. It seems to stop at a certain distance. Nothing goes back. Nothing recedes. Everything only goes back so far, because they were limited by that distance. Now, there's a rumor out there that I will fully admit that I helped spread back when in my younger days. Was one of the reasons for the stylistic view of that was they were so poor they could only afford one light. So therefore everything was painted on for that. So, well, yes, the shadows were painted on to help, because they only had very limited lights, but you can see throughout different shots there were multiple cast shadows. They had more than one light, but they only had one primary light.
Right.
So a lot of that was they only had so much space to work with it, which was huge, but also helped really limit things down. So there were different scenes from the movie that were in earlier scripts that they had to cut out because they didn't have the space for it. And a lot of the second part of that with the dream concept is this was German expressionist, intentionally German expressionist film. So therefore, and there's debate about is it truly one or just or German expressionist inspired by it. But when you look at all the backgrounds with the sharp angles, everything's angular, all the windows and doors are painted off at like very obscene and very unique, not obscene as in graphic, but obscene as in wildly dynamic angles. That was very much a very German expressionistic viewpoint for that. That was very intentional. So everything had the top, even with that broken down to the battle between the glass battle between the people in power and everyone else. Because you look at the background for the fair scene, and every time you have a city scene, you have the castle up on top, and below that is everything, all the people down below them. Yet everything is still sharp, highly angular concepts with everything. So that was a lot of that. And I was going to say this earlier, but another fun thing with that, if you look back and you look at the makeup, only two characters are the characters that have the German expressionistic makeup with them. It's Caligari and Cesar. Everyone else is wearing normal clothes. Some of it is stylized 1880s. Other times it's current 1919, 1920. They try to make sure when they designed it so it was more timeless. It wasn't like stuck in a specific year. But they were very intentional with, and even the artists themselves went through and tried to make sure that when they did the makeup themselves, that it was very incredibly stylized. And you don't realize why it's so stylized until the end of the movie, when you realize, oh, these are the characters that are fictions within the protagonist's mind. Everyone else, which also brings to mind, was everything else real? Was it fake? What's going on? Excuse me. But everything else, well, those two characters are wildly stylistic, and it's wonderful to see them as that, which gives it even that much impact when you see those characters show up at the very end of the movie. But so that was just incredibly fascinating for me, because I did a little bit of a background to double check on stuff. So I didn't spout any more lies like I did with the single life thing. Try to catch up with that, try to make amends for that. But they made sure to paint shadows and everything, so they don't worry about lighting with stuff, so they could just save money. You also know if something people may or may not notice, it was the constant reuse of furniture throughout the movie, where if there's a high back chair with like scalloped slats across the back of it, which is used and repainted throughout the movie. So it's the same chair, it just shows up in different scenes because they're in that so much of a limited budget because of that.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I actually, when I watched this time, it wasn't, oh, this is fun to watch. I'm enjoying it. It was clipboard out, pen out, taking notes, checking with stuff with that. And this movie was also big on when they did the hues, like I mentioned earlier about, and please interrupt me at any point with this.
No, we're fascinated.
No. This is class.
Yeah. So I had by the way, everyone, I used to be a college professor as well. So I used to teach comic book, penciling, inking, production, and a fourth one. It was a while ago, and I'm on the spot, so I forgot. But when they and there with that little side joke, I actually lost my train of thought, which is quite wonderful. But they, so I actually had my notes out for them. I was taking notes, making sure that everything with this.
So when you say they reuse the chair, like how many times are we talking?
Yes. It is in multiple scenes in multiple places and different people's rooms at the same time. Oh, not the same time, but different people's rooms throughout the movie.
That's
so
cool.
It's a high back chair. It's got like 6 or 8 slats across the back, where kind of it's flat across the back, scalped across the bottom of it. And some of it's a light tan, and other parts it's black. And it brought me back to what I was going with which was the hues. This was one of the first movies that had an active. Not the first one. The first ones that had an active decision making when they chose the hues of the tint of the film. Because most people, when they watch silent films, say, "Oh, there's all black and white things, all static. It's all that." Those are because those are the cheap transfers from the original stock over to a black and white thing for black and white audiences, or for black and white TVs, or for black and white film at that time. So it didn't matter. Because you look at the original cuts of those, the hues, like the tints, like could be rose or amber or an aqua, would actually matter for the film. Because there's a part, if you're watching in black and white, you don't notice it. But if you watch it in the actual hues, they turn the light on and it goes from blue to amber to show it's from dark to white. There are other times where the hues can show, is this reality or is this insanity? So they're actually using that as a part of the language. So you don't realize when you're watching, how you're watching, you don't realize at the time, oh, this is dark light, whatever, cool. And then at the end, like, oh, wait a minute. In retrospect, the whole Kaiser Soze going over the board in the back of the behind the detective, like, oh, now it all comes together.
Mm-hmm.
So with the hues, it made a huge difference. Not a pun there, but made a huge difference there with the actual viewing of the movie versus, oh yeah, black and white kind of jumps around. You don't. For all y'all out there, when you watch, if you're able to watch classic silent films, try to hunt down the original toned hues if you can, because it actually does make a difference, and you will enjoy the movie more if you can find those hues. They're also usually the ones that have been officially restored, so you're going to have a much better visual print quality off of it as well.
Nice. I thought in this one in particular, it worked really well because obviously it doesn't look the way movies look now,
Correct.
But that gave it a feel of adding to the weirdness of what's really going on here. And I don't know if that's just something I brought to it, probably, but it gave me like this added layer that was just really interesting, knowing the plot before I watched it, and just seeing this weird, like the whole set design is weird, So,
absolutely,
yeah.
No, it was very much that, but movies like that didn't look like that either. It was something that stood out at that time. There was when they made the film, they wanted to make sure it stood out from all the American releases because they wanted to make money, and America was a huge audience. So they still wanted to really be able to release in America. So they would go through and get different title cards in English, or reshoot some things where they had showed like books or stuff like that, the English version of it instead of in German. But they would go it's almost like, oh yeah, no, it was unique for the time as well, and that's cool. One of the reasons why it was such an impact on like Nosferatu. It was, without this movie, Nosferatu wouldn't look near what it does, and I love that movie. But it was like some of the shots where Cesar comes from the back over to the girl who's sleeping on the bed, where it's that long sustained shot. Mm-hmm. Part of that was expressions. The other part was you can't move the camera around. You're kind of stuck with single shots, and they really wanted to create a drawn out tension. So that was really one of the first movies that actually used that as a forbearing shot. Because that was one of the fun things about this period of time was it was just starting to kind of figure out, wait a minute, these trying to distinguish itself from plays. Because even this movie had it was a movie in 6 acts. So everything was like, here's a title card of Act 1, and here's the title for this act. So just like it was a play. Yeah. So it's still making that transition, but allowed for very much that shift over.
Maybe that's why I was thinking movies looked more like this. Like I didn't think they all look exactly like this by any means, but I'm thinking about the movies that I watch from these time periods, and I'm like, they were all stuff that would have been heavily influenced by this. So that's just me not watching other stuff and knowing these things. But
no, it was very much so. And even within that, when doing the research, I found out the writers for this were both veterans of the First World War.
Yeah.
And so they abhorred violence, and they also abhorred violence, but also abhorred they had a great fear of a totalitarian state.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when you go in and you see the city clerk, and the city officials in the movie are sitting on these obscenely high chairs.
Yeah,
try to give them a sense of like domineering imperiality about them. So they're very stylistic, very heavily designed. They've got arcane markings on them, which like is a stylistic design, or is that some kind of hidden unknown language on there? So therefore, it gives it that sense of power where it's that imperialness to it. As I said previously, the background had the castle above everyone. All the powers were made by all the decisions were made by a heavily authoritarian figure, where Caligari has absolute control over everything, and with that absolute control causes incredible power. Whereas the main theme of like, can absolute authoritarian cause people to do things they don't want to do? Can you train people to be murderers? So that was a big fear, especially right after World War I, where can authoritarian leadership force people to be against who they are or get rid of their humanity? And that was a big thing with this theme as well, where Cesar is sent to kill the girl, but instead of killing her, he kidnaps her and gets chased off, and he dies himself. Again, spoiler, 102 years ago. But it's something where they really wanted to make that point of, is there even a person who has been alive for 23 years and asleep for 23 years, does he still have the basic humanity to know whether or not to kill? And so that was very much a message. And there was a debate whether or not was that the message they really were active with when writing it, or something that someone else pointed out, and they said, dude, that's dope as hell. Let's go ahead and use that. Yes, I meant that. Which, as you know, as a writer, that's what all writers do. Visual artists do. It's like, that looks like a phoenix. It totally does. You're welcome.
I was like Jordan Peele because of that, because any theory anybody throws at Peele, he's just like, oh, that's interesting. It's never yes, it's never no. It's just
I love that, because that covers his ass with, yeah, I meant that, or no, I didn't. It's like, you don't know that. I do.
Oh, I wanted to do this. This is what I'm trying to do. Or,
well, there was one interview.
The secret Easter egg, you know? Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I was going to say, there was one interview, I think it was post either Get Out. I think it was when he was promoting Us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was reading tweets from people who had theories about Get Out and whatever, right? So it's like, oh, well, the colors that they represented this. And it was like, yeah, same thing. Yeah, that's a good theory. And then someone asked a very profound question saying like, oh, make a profound statement saying, I love the way that you did X, Y, and Z in the film. And he looks up at the camera and he's like, yeah, that's what I did. And it was kind of like, oh shit, that was a good idea. That's not what I was doing. But yeah, I meant to do that.
Yep.
And I just love that he's kind of like, I'm complimenting this person by saying you had a great idea, but playing into the joke that a lot of self-absorbed artists do, where it's just like, yes, that's exactly what I was planning on doing.
And
how did it take you this long to figure it out?
That is exactly what the writers of this book did, or this movie did as well. There's some stuff, totally. The other part, like, there's no evidence, no, sort of like they had it as an earlier thing. It was like later interviews, like, oh yeah, no, I totally meant that. Yes, I am brilliant. Which I also need to do more. The Jordan Peele's like, no, I didn't, but that is amazing. If you like that, stick with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that
was that lens.
Yeah, they did that as well. But it was fascinating when I found out, like, oh yeah, because there was been like some people try to use this book as like a pathway to the creation of Hitler and the Third Reich and the Nazi Party, where there was a book that was written about, oh, this is actually leading to creating that, when the creators of the book actually try to do it as the opposition of, or writers of the movie try to do it as an opposition to that, where things can be just so horribly hijacked and reconditioned, resubverted to shift a specific paradigm or belief.
Right.
There's a whole thing about how supposedly, and this is all just quick readings, so I'm not the expert on this. I'm probably going to mess it up. But there's a whole thing about how they didn't have the framing device in the original script, or they had a framing device, but it was extremely different, and that they weren't necessarily happy with the way the wraparound came about with the whole institution and stuff.
Yep.
And I was looking at it as if you were legitimately writing the script that they later said they were writing, which is very anti-authoritarian and very anti-war, etc., the wraparound ruins that, because it all of a sudden becomes all about authority taking over and being right, and that you were crazy for not trusting them to begin with. And I was like, man, if that's the story you were trying to tell, they really shit on you with this wraparound. So.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where that, because I did a little bit, I mean, I'm, again, not an expert, but did a little bit of reading as well. And it ran that as well, where they kept on like, this was not a smooth production. There was like a bunch of people they tried to get for different things. They wanted Fritz Lang, I think they wanted Fritz Lang to direct it at one point. And there just things kept on, as with any production, which makes this movie even more amazing, that even with all of that, this is still such a quintessential lightning in a bottle production, where these things shouldn't all work together. This shouldn't work. A post-war Germany, German expressionist, surrealistic, non-linear storytelling movie should not still be one of the forefathers of modern cinema. I mean, there's always going to be something, but with all things that went on, it should be more like the Citizen Kane, where it was a singular vision that was able to come to fruition, not we tried a bunch of stuff and there's a lot of arguments and fights within have like artistic direction, different points, and we had three writers on it, and or two writers, and so much with that. I will say a little, check my notes, a little aside, which is fun for me as I don't know if I'm a huge comic nerd anymore, because the bar on that has become so high. But Conrad Veidt, one of the actor who plays Cesar, was also in a role called the man who was also known as the Man Who Laughs. Because of his look for that, that's where we get the Joker from. The look of the Joker. If you look it up,
Son of a bitch.
Look it up right now if you want. Look up Man Who Laughs, Veidt, Veidt. You see his big old smiling grin, uplit with the hair slicked back. That is the Joker. And it's not like, oh, it looks
I didn't know it was the same guy.
Yep.
Like I knew I knew that background as far as coming from that, but I didn't know it was the same guys in this movie.
Same, And
imagine being in two films that are that influential. Wow.
Yeah. And so, but you look back and that is, even every time I draw the Joker, he's like the first person I go. If I want someone's looking for the classic Joker, I go to that, because it is such an amazing thing. You really don't see it, because within this movie, Veidt keeps a very solemn face throughout until he's attacking the woman whose name keeps on eluding me in white at the sequence where he decides not to kill. He has this big, grotesque, over exaggerated facial expression, great for stage, more a bit over the top for film. But you're like, oh yeah, no, he can totally distort his face and create that smile. So it's one of those things. And when I do it, I mean, he's got a huge filmography, but or at least he's been other big. Was he in Casablanca as well?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It's whenever you're in a public place, always make sure, if you don't know, speak acknowledge you don't know, not that, oh yeah, he was telling me this. Like, no, you're wrong. Oh, now I've just negated everything else I've just said. So by choosing to die on that hill. But it was just one of those little fun things, like people don't realize how much of an impact that he has had.
Wow.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I would have never guessed that was the same guy.
Yep.
That wouldn't have even started to occur to me. So I just pulled up a picture and I was like, okay, I see it now. That's crazy.
Yes, no, it is. It's insane. One of the other fun things about this movie is there is no original score to the movie. What they did back in the day was they just put on there was no worry about rights or anything like that. They just go up, put some records up of whatever they thought would fit in there at the different times. So you'd have a bunch of late 18th century classical, what we call now classical music, put in the background. So that's why when you watch it now, there's all these different scores. And that's one of the things that drove me crazy with the version I watched on the YouTube version, which was the 2006 German restoration using a 1994 score. It is a 1994 score. It's got this is why Philip Glass is the person you go to when you want to do a score for silent films, because it can still fit with modern sensibilities, but still fits with the theme of the film. Because the score, I don't know which version y'all watched, but with my version, it had like a electric guitar in there and some synthesizer that fit off-putting, and some kind of weird like 60s music for a little bit there. 60s hippie music for a little bit there. Just it felt so out of place from what you're actually watching. Then in 1994, a modern composer might have thought, "Oh yeah, it fits. This is still timeless enough, but it keeps it modern enough to pull the audience in." Like that is not what you want. So it was just something that popped in my head about like where it was like it was nice, it was great, but the score is great if it keeps you in the film, if it accentuates the film. The minute it starts pulling you out of the film, the score is failing.
Yeah, and it's almost distracting instead.
It drove me crazy. Sometimes it fit wonderfully. Other times, like this does not fit. This is very much a dated score, and not in a good way. Yeah, everything. Just give Philip Glass the money. Just do it and let him do it all. That's all we need. Because his Dracula score, that's his calling card for that. That's why it works.
Man. I literally watched like I want to say a third of it without my sound even on, because I was like, it's a silent movie.
Yep.
And then I was like, wait, what about music and stuff? And then I turned it on, and then I was like, I don't understand what's happening.
Yep. Ta-da!
Now it all makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's again. I did a little bit of covered my ass and stuff. So going like, what's this stuff look like?
That's pretty fun.
But it's also fascinating some of the but looking at like some of the social issues of this. You had the brutal authoritarianism, but it was also very much showing that there is a tremendous. I mean, the era was very much a sexist era, as sexist areas all media of the time shows, where the female is solely there as an object of plot point. And that was, I mean, that can be very frustrating for anyone who wants to watch this outside of a generalized traditional masculine point of view, where it's like, there she is, she screams, she cries, she almost dies, and never mind, she's crazy bitch. Okay, that explains it. It's like that's so disrespectful and so demeaning to like half the population, where this. And I will also say, and out of full respect for the movie, namely, she very much is a side part of it. She is much more she's almost a set piece, an anecdote to the story, because she's there as an object, and at no point does the story allow her to become something that helps progress the story forward. I mean, there is that when she recites her lines at the end about the queen cannot. Whatever. It's like, okay, no, she must be crazy because she thinks she's a queen, and okay, we've established that this is an insane asylum. Again, thanks everyone for coming back, checking out earlier, watching the film, and coming back. This is why I didn't want to spoil that. But is very much something where you're looking through, and there's like, and right now going through my head, like, where could a female character actually fit well in the film, accepting that it is 1920s post-war Germany, a surrealist thing, where everything is about the corruption of power. I fully admit it also be difficult to place any feminine characters in there where they would fit effectively within the story that's being told, outside of a ticket, like the ticket taker, or because it would be a tough sell for a woman to be a guard at an asylum,
right?
But it was still frustrating to acknowledge that maybe, yes, it's part of the genre to it, but it's one of like the duality of it. I acknowledge that for what it is of the era and the story it's being told, it's tough to fit a character in there. That as well, it's like it's great frustrating that they do not exist. So.
I thought, not to dive too far from that, but I thought just the representation of the other patients around him was interesting, because they find a way to show how they're all kind of weird. he still feels pretty normal. And I love that that's because he's basically the narrator. And even though we're not physically seeing through his eyes, we're being fed the story through him.
Yes.
Right.
And even at the end, as he's locked away, like, he still doesn't feel as abnormal as the other people he's shown us because we're still looking at it through him.
Absolutely. And that's the non like that was what made the non-linear narrative so wonderful. Like, it was so rarely used. They did such a good job with it. You're dropped in. This is reality. You accept like all the surreality, all the unique parts of it. This is a stylistic film. So therefore, they established the baseline right there. This is our baseline. This is just surreality. Everything's cool. All the weird stuff, okay, that's just part of it. And it's not till the very end, like, they snap everything back to reality where they show all the sets again, but they're not like the cell where he's put into. Doesn't have these like weird amoeba painted all over the place. It's just kind of brick walls.
Right.
So therefore, there's still the hint of German expressionism, but everything there still, exists. But what was we accepted as the reality of existence is now like, oh no, we've been told a lie the entire time. We've been Kaiser Soze, which again, it fits here because we fit the lie. We believe in the honesty of the narrator. We're introduced to the honesty in the narrator, which was one of the first time this has been done in film, which was
and it's
wonderful.
done pretty well.
It's very well executed.
I can't help but feel that Shutter Island stole from this a little bit.
God damn you, James.
It's
one.
I was like, I know that's on Don's list.
Ouch. I'm going to duck over here in the corner and let you duke this out.
It's an ongoing game. He'll try to guess my double feature at some point.
No.
Nice. But even with that, one of the notes I put down here is this story, like we talked about, the surreality and the false honest narrator. This story only works with all those things working as they do. If they try to tell a story any other way, the story falls apart, the story falls apart, or any interest in the story falls apart. It only works with starting off stylistically. It'd be like starting off with a Quentin Tarantino style, or even if we go crazier, Zack Snyder, where like he's overly stylistic with everything. In the end, all of a sudden it turns into not Steven Spielberg, but like a Christopher Nolan film, where it goes from that dynamic concept over to a brutal, not brutalistic reality, but more of a traditional reality, where all of a sudden that snap creates so much more tension, creates so much more dynamic within it, that the impact of the story is that much more. It's not just, oh, you're crazy. It's like, oh, wow, you made me believe your reality. You made me part of crazy as well. I fed in and I believed in your insanity. I supported your insanity. I wanted your insanity to become real. And now that I found the whole thing, I've got to go back and readjust to everything before it. And that's another thing I love about this, where it is so hard to thread that needle on that shift. You really have to be trusting that the audience is going to stick with you after that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so difficult to create that shift over. Because as a storyteller, it's something like the minute you break that trust, if you don't correctly break that trust with the viewer, with the reader, you've lost the reader. They're gone. You're not bringing them back.
Yep.
It's not done in a cheap way, because we often have these movies where it's like, it was all a dream.
Yes.
Or, I was in a coma or something like that. And here you have this moment where you're getting the insight, the perspective from one in a way that they would tell you the story, right? There would be the details would be fuzzy, but they would talk about the generalities of certain things. Or if they're talking about something with specifics, they're going to be very detailed about it. But the rest of the story, it's going to be one of those things where it's enough details are left out to where it's believable.
Yeah.
But enough details are put in to where you couldn't say it wasn't real.
Yeah. And it's the great thing about entertainment is we're already conditioned like, this is not actual reality. This is a story. This is a fable. This is a tale. So already we've got a certain degree of suspension of disbelief. And then by the creators of this movie were able to feed off that already implicit suspension of disbelief to increase it even more. Like the part where they have the Caligari going around and singing like the words of insanity around him.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, oh wow, this is what he's thinking. This is what this character is in his mind. This is what in his brain. We're seeing inside his thoughts, when in reality we're seeing what thoughts are being put inside the doctor's mind by the protagonist. So it's not in his thoughts. Like he's creating his own fiction about what his antagonist is thinking, just thereby reviling him even more, but it also, by doing that, fleshes out the character of Caligari, not to just, oh, he's a bad guy, like, oh, now we see what his thoughts are, we're inside of him. By putting us inside of his brain, we now create more honesty or more depth and more stability to that character.
I really liked one touch of how they start to tell you that things are really messed up. And it's like Caligari runs back into the asylum, and then the main guy's following right behind him, and then they're going through his stuff because Caligari's asleep.
Yep.
And the time doesn't make any sense at all of a sudden.
Yep.
And I loved that, because there's a piece of me, even knowing the story, I was like, the hell, that doesn't make sense. And then I was like, yeah, of course it doesn't make sense, dipshit. Like,
yep.
But I thought that was such a great touch.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but we have the flashback within a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not linear, but even within that, we have the flashback of, oh, we're going through. He's convinced the staff that Caligari is the monster. Let's go through his books. Oh no, we found this conveniently placed diary, and within the diary, it's like, oh, here's him like going back. At last, I have a somnambulist, so I can go through and I can test my theories and make this work. Mm-hmm. And so from that, by doing that, it again reinforces how Caligari is like, oh no, he's a real character. We now have more backstory about this character instead of like these are all fictions that are made by the main character within this.
And it's like I'll mention this movie because I have to. Gone Girl. There's this great scene where the detective is looking at the evidence. He said, "Yeah, this is very suspicious to see a clue that's like labeled clue." Yeah. Or paraphrasing what she says, but like it just stands out. Like it just seems as though something's not right with this. And I mean, that's a great way that it gets represented in the film when they start going through that diary. And I think what they say, it goes back to 1783 or something that he'd been doing this.
Or no, they found a book from 1783 who was then.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes. He's like, I've got this book, this old tome, and I can use this tome to actually prove that I am an expert on this. And I finally have my basically test dummy. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it creates all this fiction around there, which is absolutely fascinating. And then even shifts from there where I've said it before, I've said it again with Usual Suspects, where you go and you see Cesar in the asylum. He's wearing the same outfit, just it's all messed up and dirty. It doesn't have the white X across the top, but the sweater is still the black sweater with the light stripes across the turtleneck and across the sleeves. So it's something where he's taking those little hints of truth from around him and manufacturing back in and tying it back into that story.
Right.
Which also makes it that more dynamic when you finally see Cesar and Caligari in real life, because again, those are the two characters that didn't have they went out of their way. There are only two people that have the dynamic makeup. Not just the clothing is crazy, but the makeup is insane as well. And it's like, because they're the only two ones. They're like, oh, now it all kind of starts shifts in where he's created these monstrosities from what's available around him. So and actually, the makeup from them was actually a lot of that was on the suggestions of how extreme it went. From what I read, was from the actors as well. But it makes they're such not iconic, or iconographic, but such dynamic representations. Where Cesar has those black circles under his eyes, where it's like, is it shadow or is it just really sleepy because he's that tired? But it somehow it fits. It shouldn't fit. Whenever you do something like this, you need to make sure you have continuity of images throughout. And by breaking the continuity of image to show these two characters solely as that, it somehow works. And it's fascinating.
Mm.
I wonder how much it's aided by being a circus or a carnival, like when we first see the makeup, really.
That, you know what? Indeed. Sorry, I tried to pull that thing from her. Like, yes, I meant that as well. Like, no, it's I hadn't thought of that till right now.
Look, I'm sitting here just like grasping my chin, thinking about it after James brought it up because.
Yep. It's like that could be that's a possibility. Like, yeah, no, it's like I hadn't thought about it at all. Like, that's an absolutely great way to segue it in. So you're going through, you're already so like expecting the clown, expecting a high makeup. So when it shifts in, there's like, oh wow, he's automatically there,
and then that's how you know him after that. Yep. So you don't really think about it
because it doesn't seem strange. Even Caligari's makeup, which my note on it was, are they trying to make him look non-human or make him look like a creature, or is this for spectacle, or again, is he just remembering it this way because of his mental health?
Yeah, where he's perpetually sleepy, but it also fits in with. They're actually in many ways seem like they're more the movie than everyone else because they fit in with the background. Because everything else is German surrealist, and all of a sudden, these two main characters in German surrealist, all of a sudden, they are part. They're in many ways more part of that world itself. And I'm actually also happy I noticed in line, when they're standing in line, they had a person of diminutive stature there, but it was just a person getting. It wasn't like they didn't make a point. Oh, look, it's like the Wizard of Oz, where someone's small, so therefore we're going to make a spectacle of it. It was solely here is a shorter person with a taller hat, but no point or no mention is made of it outside of that. So is it part of it? But he's also the first person who goes in, the last person in through before they actually have an interaction. So is that part of a subtle segue in? Trying to create more the concept of circus, or is it what is the purpose there? So the other thing that, as far as the insanity goes, is I've mentioned this before. I love the fonts that they used because they have the English version. The German, actually, I don't read German, but I prefer the German version because it's a bit crazier. So when they use the font for all the title cards and for all the dialogue, which is incredibly, very sparse even for a silent film, all the font there is very specific. It's already built in insane. So you've already got that. Oh, this is crazy. You know what? Crazy is the new normal. I've already adjusted to the insanity for this. So if there anything else comes up from that, it already is already almost part of the baseline. But those title cards are just for me, they're just stylistically and artistically stunning.
Yeah. The version I watched was the German cards and then English subtitles. Ooh. And I have subtitles on for everything because otherwise I miss weird stuff in the background. But I didn't even realize it to start with, and I think that would lose a lot because it adds to, as an American viewer today, it adds to like these layers of what's being told to me, and it becomes another symbolic layer or fence or whatever between me and the reality of what's happening, and that's kind of cool in itself.
Yeah.
And yes, they were visually amazing.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where really check for the audience again. Please check out anytime you see something. Try to find if they have, because sometimes they'll have all the hues. Other times it'll be grayscale. Then they'll have a color sequence, like with the Red Death, where they'll be black and white, and also it'll be all color for the ball for the masquerade. Same with a Phantom of the Opera. For both those, like little parts where here's all color, because they had for color back then they had to hand color all the plates. Color film was either didn't exist or was incredibly cost prohibitive. So what they go through is they'd shoot the black and white, and then have artists that would go out there and they'd go and don't know what they colored with it. Bad artists, but they'd go through it. They would hand color every single frame to fit what it was. So it was incredibly cost prohibitive to do stuff like that. Where if you just put through a different hued, different colored film, you get like, okay, we'll go from the grayscale stock over to the amber stock, over the rose, over to the aqua, to whatever it is. That was much more cost effective.
Frame by frame. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's sometimes you see the very earliest. That's why it's got that weird spotty color around it. Is they try that is much more like 2 or 3 minute films, or like, oh, here's a pixie or a fairy. We'll hand color that fairy there because we can do that, leave everything else grayscale, giving that much more of a color feel, and which actually is a process that's still being done now. There's I have to look at my bookshelf, but there's a great. I'll come back to. Of course, it's beyond a picture of something. Black Magic from Image Comics by. Oh, she's a brilliant artist. I love her work. By Nicholas Scott. When they do that, it's a grayscale book, except for when the magic shows up. And then when the magic shows up, that's the only time they use color in the book. So it's something like that. Where, in fact, when I did Medusa, I thought about doing it myself. Like, oh, I'll just do grayscale and I'll do color for that. And I started reading through Black Magic. I'm like, son of a bitch. It's brilliant here. She did a great job. I can't do it as well because it'd be too much like Theft. That I've got an amazing colorist by name of Tamara Bondelane who's coloring it as well, so it actually ended up better in the end. But it's something that when they did something like that in the past, it was incredibly rare. But yeah,
I'm just thinking about the insanity of having the job of painting frame by frame. That's
you get it's not worth it. That's why it very rarely exists. It wasn't worth the money. The ROI on it was horrible, and especially trying to get things out to as many venues as possible. It's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, jeez.
But that's the weird thing about this, as I'm thinking about, like, outside of things we've talked about as far as the worry about totalitarianism. Can you condition people to murder against their will? This is very much in many ways a straightforward horror movie where you've got the monster, you've got the villain. Actually, I take it back. I'm a dumbass. I completely go against what I just said, because the more I think about it, the more I realize, no, I'm the dumbass. This is a great horror movie because it's not the standard Frankenstein. It's the more it becomes much more layered the more you look at it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there you go. Me catching myself mid sentence. But it's something we're like, well, I was like, no, it's not, Tony. Shut up. No, you're being a dumbass right now. Look at all the characters that's there. You've got the monster is a victim, and then you find out the monster is a victim is actually just a figment of imagination for someone who's actually detached from reality. And this whole thing is just one person's fantasy to try to put themselves as the hero of their own story.
Mm-hmm. And you know what I picked up on? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go. No, that's pretty much it. I mean,
I was going to pick up on that point with Frances, with that whole, she'll choose one of us. That whole idea of, was it Julia? I think was her name.
Yep.
Jane. I'm sorry. Where she's going to pick us, and I'm sorry, she's going to pick one of us, and we'll leave it at that. But I just found it as an interesting way of how, and I'm going to pick on cishet men because they're still having trouble with the bear situation.
Oh,
and James, it doesn't matter when this episode comes out, they're still going to be having trouble with the bear situation.
Yep.
The idea that
I made a comment when we were recording yesterday that it would be outdated, knowing that it wouldn't. I was just messing with it.
It's not going to be outdated. I guarantee you, I'm probably going to start receiving manuscripts that talk about this discourse. But the idea that, hey, she's going to choose one of us, it's great. I'm going to, because of the perception of masculinity or the perception of gender roles themselves, she's going to only choose one of us. We're the only good guys. Mm-hmm. And my rival gets killed by this thing that I created in my head, or at least this idea of this sleepwalking murderer is going to kill my rival, and then that woman will be for me.
Yep.
And just thinking about how that, whether we want to call it toxic masculinity for that time period or not, or just ingrained social mores and misconceptions that this woman will have no choice but to choose you. If there were a bear, I'd send Cesar to go kill the bear too, in my head, because there's nothing that's going to separate the two of us.
where she's an and again it's very much that where she is she is an it. She is
she's an object.
She is a piece of property where it's if you get the ball tomorrow, you get the ball. If I get the ball, I get the ball. Where it's not that there's someone who means a whole lot to me and I feel incredibly powerful about it. It's like this is an object to be possessed. My friendship with a single individual is far more important than the entire another person's existential being. It's like, yeah.
Well, it's like when we would often have on TV shows, sitcoms, or even in movies for that matter, where there's like this ridiculous love triangle, right? It's the best friend who quote unquote got friend zoned. Sorry, but there's no such thing as a friend zone. That doesn't happen. Like, I don't know why for so long we collectively believe, because there are people still believe it, why we collectively believe that. Oh no, I'm including myself. That's why I say we, because they're because for the longest time we just thought that, well, I'm the best suitor for this person, and the guy, I'm her best friend. I've known her for X amount of years. I know her favorite foods and blah 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 blah. To the point where you then tell the woman, you got to choose between me and him, or me and her, or whatever triangle or square relationship there happens to be, and it's always treated as though, oh my gosh, this guy, he's standing up for the woman he loves, and not thinking that's an unhealthy relationship. One, you are thinking that you're owed something because you're her friend.
Yep.
And then two, you're not giving that person any agency and giving them any, I'll even say, sentience, that they can make decisions for themselves that don't involve you being their paramour.
No, absolutely. And that was kind of that's a better statement of what I was trying to phrase earlier with how.
No, it isn't. This is a conversation, Tony. No, it is not. This is a conversation. Do not do that.
I appreciate how you put it. Then we'll go with that. But it was where she was not a person, but she was solely an object. And throughout the whole thing, where it's all thing of possession, even with people where it's like, oh no, I'm worried about this person who's, it's like, oh no, it's worried about an object that may be taken out of play. But yeah, that drove me crazy as well when I saw that. Oh, whoever she picks between the two of us, like she's her own person with her own agency,
right? And
that concept of like where she is such a second-class concept. Where it's like, you know what, if you make it the comic shop before I do, you get a copy of X-Men before I do, it's okay. I'll get the next one, or I'll pre-order, I'll get something else where it's like so dismissive of, again, any reality of that person being its own, being their own person. So yeah, no, and the worst part is it's still better than so many other movies of that era. Because I'll sometimes, when I'm working on stuff, I'll background like old movies of the 30s and 40s. And their whole genres, I'll avoid the Charlie Chan films for obvious reasons. But I had other ones where it's like, oh my God, I've got to put this, like their movies I've had to turn off. At least same with some of the wuxia and the martial arts films of the 70s and 80s, where it's so brutal in many ways, how the treatment of women in them. It was just like, and I don't care how this movie ends. I'm going to put this off. I'll go on to something else. I don't care.
Just gonna read a summary of it.
Yeah, and with this one, but in not defenseless movie, many ways it for the plot of the story, she could be anything, because it's more Cesar has gone out and he's taken something. He's taken something of value at any point. So it's no point. It's like, oh no, they're killing these. It's always someone's been murdered. Not, oh no, this horrible person has been murdered. It's like an object is gone throughout the film. So it has more of an emotional impact for the viewer. It's like, oh, that's a human being. But when you look at it as it was written for the time, especially for the ethos of the time, it's frustrating to watch that there were it's considered as how they did it. So but that said, I still love the movie. It's one of those like two things that I can acknowledge that this is frustrating, and still love the rest of it.
This is one of the times when I say thank goodness for Mae West, which she came along when she did, because she gave a great alternative to the way that women were treated in films, and she made sure, at least when she had production control, she made sure that shit was not going to be in her movies. Like even because I think about this with, I wrote down Klondike Annie as one of the movies to pair with this, because there's a point where all these guys are like, well, you need to come away with me, and she's like, no. Then she goes with this one guy, and he said, I'm crazy about you. I can't live without you. Blah blah blah. And she basically says, no, like I'm going to choose who I want to be with. Yeah. And the big thing is not these two men at the end saying, oh, Annie, you got to choose me or you got to choose him. It's, she goes to one and says, hey, if you're willing to wait for me, I'm going to go tell this guy I can't, I'm going to tell him I can't be with him, but I can't be with you as well. I need to go face, spoiler alert, movie's been out for 90 something years.
Oh no.
She was going to go back to San Francisco to face like murder charges because she killed her abusive husband.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess in the late 20s, early 30s, I don't think they had a term for woke.
God.
I'm sure they did. I don't know if we can repeat it on podcasts.
Oh no! I mean, the only people that were, I mean, at least because I love Mae West, the only people that I remember like who were really against her were people like Billy Sunday and Sister Amy McPherson. The religious quote unquote moral majority of that period. Yeah. And Mae West, to her credit, like when Amy McPherson, I think, lost like her show or her income or something, Mae West sent her money.
Yeah.
And she simply said, I'm sending you this because you have a right to criticize what I'm doing. And I don't think that, I don't think the people that you're trying to lead with your religion, with your church, all that stuff like that, I don't think your voice should be silenced. I don't agree with you, but I'm going to give you some money to put you back on your feet to help you out because you've been helping people. I mean, you've been doing things you don't like me, but you do good things for some people. So I'm going to help you. And I'm not asking for you to take it easy on me because, I'm
not bribing you to ease up. It just, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was, God, what year was it? It might have been 35 or 36 or something, but it was well within Mae Young's post theater years. And she was doing movies. Yeah. Because I shouldn't even say she got in trouble because it was New York, but she had a production in New York in the 1920s called Sex. And that was just the title. It was really just talk. The title is somewhat misleading. It was just risque for that time period. Yeah. It wasn't anything, if you say, hey, the show's called Sex, and you're like, oh my God. Like,
remember Madonna's book and how people freaked out over that?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was like, I mean, the title alone. I mean, yes, the rest of the book is like, oh wow, photos, yay!
Yeah. I'm going to be provocative because I know what's going to get your attention, and I think with this movie, it's whether they mean to or not. I'm going to give them the credit because hey, they're dead. They can't make the argument back or at least take the credit for it. So I'm going to give them the credit. I think by including this discussion about women and things like that, you partially have this time capsule discussion about women's role in society, not just as far as a woman of Jane's stature, but just women's roles in society, because there were women that were being put in sanitariums and asylums for simple things like disagreeing with their husbands.
Yep.
Or refusing to have children. Or there were cases of women who wore pants. They wore pants and they had to go to the asylum.
Yep.
Because they were confused.
I was just thinking earlier about the concept of how they need to change the term hysterectomy. Where it's like, at least there may be an argument out there to keep it, and I'm obviously willing to listen to it, but it's the whole concept of the history of that term is like, we need to find something else because it is a damaged term.
Right.
And we need to, at least from my point of view, again, I draw comics for a living. I am not a medical ethicist. So therefore, and again, I'm also a cis white male, so therefore that does obviously color a lot of it as well. But all that's, I was thinking about it earlier, I'm like, yeah, that needs to find a better term, because nearly every woman I know that when you mention the term, if they know what it actually means, like there's a huge like wince there. It's almost like a gut punch of like knowing the history of it.
Oh my God. You know what? Even thinking about that, as far as like that term. And again, the irony is that there are three men talking about women's representation in history.
Yes.
And in film. But
absolutely.
You think about the way in which women, just the idea about the uterus, like right now, we're recording this on Cinco de Mayo. This past week, Halle Berry and some political officials were saying, like, hey, we need to focus on dispelling the myths and the misinformation about menopause and with women's reproductive health and things like that. And first time I saw it, I was like, who thinks menopause is bad? And it's my privilege of like, I'm in these circles to where nobody's trying to put women in a different room and saying like, oh, I can't be around you. You're going to have these mood swings and you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. Like, I saw my mom go through it, and I remember her reaction was simply, just the fluctuation in temperature, sweating, chills, some nausea. But, the idea that people treat it as though this is death for you. You go through menopause, you have, quote unquote, no more use as a woman. Mm-hmm. None. Because so much is tied into your reproductive health that we want to make sure that we can control it. And if you are not a producer, we have to shame you.
Yep. Well, not just that, but there's also the other side of it of it is so misunderstood and so under-researched. That's like, it's like, oh, you got girly stuff going on. Oh, not the big thing. You got, got hot or cold, the hormone thing, not an issue. Or like, so do I have it? We don't know really how to test for it. We haven't really studied how to test for it. Mm-hmm. It's stuff is there, but here's a hand fan, and good luck.
Right.
Versus the reality, like this, a lot of like we have let's again, three cis guys talking about female reproductive concepts, but it's like I've got a lot of friends who have gone through it or going through it or starting ramping up into it, and it's like there is so much more that no one knows about. And the other part I will say about us talking about is at least making discussions about it, opening up the potential for it being acceptable to talk about in society versus here's a pocket fan. Good luck. You got a personal summer. Good luck. But it was, and that's the tough part when coming back to the movie, where anytime we have a female character in there, especially with one has such a crux to the plot, but has a little action within the movie itself, it makes it very difficult. Where it turns into, so she's essentially the equivalent of the Maltese Falcon. Everyone's talking about her. She's an important part for there, but she only shows up for a little bit, and she's not what she seems.
Right.
So I was actually kind of proud of that analogy. So thank you. But it's still one of those things where again, circling back to it's still very much an artifact of its age. It was not designed as an art film. It was designed as, we're investors. We want to make money. Make us money. Okay, we'll try something different. Does this work? Made us some money. It did okay. Depends who you talk to, and kind of took it from there. But it was still incredibly influential. Still to this day. Still literally to this day.
I was gonna say, if you have a movie that doesn't, I mean, which it happens, right? You have a movie that doesn't provide something new. I don't think you've made a movie. You just copied what somebody else did. But when you have something that is going to define generations of film, the way a story is told, the way a story is mistold, things like that, it's just great to see the way that somebody executes that so well this early in film history.
Yep. And that's the thing with that. Go ahead. No, go for it.
Oh, no, I was going to say, as opposed to just, here's our telling of.
Here's the fifth version of the Maltese Falcon.
Well, I was going to say here's another version of Birth of a Nation, but I was like, we shouldn't have even had one version of it.
Yeah, which also comes back to the funny thing of how many versions of the Wizard of Oz are there? How many versions of Maltese Falcon are there? Like, I've actually one time sat there and watched all 5 versions of the Maltese Falcon, and it's fascinating to see the dynamic difference in there. And even with this movie, this wasn't a Fritz Lang movie where like, oh, he's Fritz Lang, he did all these other things. When you go back, like, oh yeah, so you have Connor and Veidt, and that's about it. And no one else had like that huge, at least from my memory. I'm happy to be corrected wrong on this, but no one else had that huge like historical impact. This was such a lightning in the bottle movie. That's another reason it's fascinating for me, because it's not that, oh, here he did Metropolis, he did he did all these, Fritz Lang did all these movies and still stand out. It's like they did. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected, because I'm doing a lot of this from memory. But it was such a lightning in the ball is the best way to phrase it for me, because so many things ended up this way. It wasn't planned this way. When they did it, it wasn't designed this way. This wasn't the intent when they made it. It just ended up, we just lucked out to get it the way it was.
Yeah, you reminded me of about 3 or 4 movies where that same thing happened, because like Jaws, because of all the mechanical issues, they ended up making a better movie than they probably would have made.
Yep. Harrison Ford having diarrhea or stomach tummy troubles in Raiders Lost Ark. We had, instead of that, was supposed to be this huge battle with a whip and a sword, and like pulls it out, bam, and turns around nonchalant. It's like, that's amazing. Was that fine?
It's my favorite part of the whole series.
Yeah, and that was solely because, like, yeah, he was sick. He could not handle going through the whole scene that day for the shooting. They had to continue on. So they're okay. We'll just do this. Pull the gun out, shoot, look around, and like, okay, like that's brilliant.
That scene, I remember one of my professors in college used that scene to talk about U.S. foreign policy, and the way he broke it down, he said, "Look, you got a country that's going into another country that it doesn't belong and doesn't need to be in, and they make use of better technology to eliminate or pacify the individuals that are native or indigenous to that land."
Yep.
And when he said that, I was like, that's a really good analogy.
Yeah. No, I laughed because it was true. It was like, no, you're absolutely right.
That was great. The other thing is, when you're talking about perspective, I can't even look at those movies the same way anymore, because I'm like, Dr. Jones was a fucking thief.
Yeah. Oh, I still love the first Raiders, and the third one has a lot of fun. But it's one of those things where I'm going back, like, I'm very much shifted over to that. Okay, I'm going to get it for its country of origin. I'm going to get it for the museum in its country of origin.
Right.
Yeah. And I will also say I respect at the time that's the only way you can see things from other parts of the country. But there's not that excuse now. Like, oh yeah, so how are you supposed to expose people to these pieces of art? Excuse me, sir, can you give your phone so I can give you an answer? That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's like, yeah, there's not that need for that. Even now they have traveling replicas for, like, when they do when they have the traveling Egypt show or the mummy show. It's never like, oh, these are things. No, these are replicas. And the other part is most of the things we see in museums, I hate to break it to you, are replicas. A lot of the really expensive things. We have a very good replica that 99.9999999% of the population has no idea that's not the real thing, because for them it's just as good, because the original ones are tucked away somewhere else where it's safe from the environment, from light, from all those things, and from potential theft. So that's something where it's like, we're good. There's no reason for that. And if nothing else, let's put those things back into their country of origin so we can create tourist trade there so that people can go see it and help stabilize the region by increasing funds to there, and want to make sure that different areas are safer for the rich people to travel to. Or not. I don't know. I draw comics.
Now I want to make a heist movie where they steal a bunch of replicas, and then the museum's like, yeah, well, good luck, dipshits. You just stole replicas. And they're like, yeah, we know that. But the people we're fencing it to don't.
No, even worse. We know that, but the general public doesn't.
Right.
See, exactly.
So now you've got the original there, which you can never show off. Anytime you come out there, and here we've got evidence of us doing this.
That's hilarious.
And yeah, because there's the other, you can always do the one and say, oh yeah, we sold the original. Okay, good luck. Because there's so much art out there that is stolen and is hidden away in someone's private collection. It is nauseating if you knew the actual numbers. I don't. I know I'm not going to pretend that I do, but it's fascinating. Another one is like, oh yeah, no, it's fake. Do you know? No. Do you still enjoy the piece? For my eye, yeah, I absolutely do, because I have no idea if it's any better. I could not tell the difference. If you've got to take the frame out, the picture out of the frame, and look at the sides of the side of the canvas to match it with something that you've got on file from that being established as the previous thing, it really turns into that boat that everyone takes apart and puts back together. Not Agamemnon. What's the boat?
Ship of Theseus.
Ship of Theseus. That one. Yes. The one from the Marvel TV show. Yes, that one. The Vision. Yes, that one. But yeah, that's very much so. But no, this movie still, even with all the issues it has, I accept it for what it is, and I still absolutely love the movie. And I think one of the things with that is, one of the things I love that DC Turner Classic Movie does is whenever they show certain movies, they have a preface in front of it stating this is very much a movie of its time. Especially they had a big old thing about blackface, where they showed all these like fully uncut movies like Judy Garland and Fred Astaire and all these other people who we didn't realize were in blackface in movies. Like, well, this is a full movie. And before that, they had these professionals, not professionals, but professors come out and academics come out and explain, here's what it is, here's what happened, here's what the people actually at the time thought about it, here's what the actors at the time thought about it. And now we're going to show it to you exactly how it is so you can make your own decisions.
Right.
And that's a huge difference. I would really love it if more and more movies, when they were put out there, just a 15-second blurb, like, here's what it is, we acknowledge, we accept it, here's a full thing, so you understand the context, not here is a Southern surrenderer who had his big old statue up in the middle of the park. Right. We don't want to forget our history. Like, well, no, history is acknowledging what the context of this is.
Exactly.
So you can have all of the traitor statues you want, put them in a museum with a plaque before it, so you know, like, here's what the reality of it is, versus, but we forget our history. No, you don't. You unless you have the context, you end up losing the history, the lessons of history.
Whenever somebody brings up you'll forget history things, right?
Yep.
I simply then pull out my card, which is,
Doctor.
Okay, well, tell me what history you know. Mm-hmm. Well, this happens. Like, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. That's incorrect. Here, when's the last time you read anything historically based, historical monographs, actually watched a documentary that was, actually done by historians and not by Fox? And I'm picking on Fox, but
yeah,
I've seen some of the stuff that they've done and produced and claimed as history. And they have done just as much damage, if not more damage, than the Daughters of Confederacy. But
yep, it's that classic. I did my research. Oh, where were you published? Where is it? Lancet? Was it which American journal? Or was it in one of the American scientific journals? Where were you published? Well, it's not. No, I read around and I thought for myself. Where's your research published? Well, no. Well, then you didn't do your research. You found something that you liked, and it stuck with you.
Yeah, I'm just like, there's a huge difference between you looked something up and you researched it.
Yep.
A huge difference. Plus, this is nothing against the general public, but to be honest, the general public doesn't know the basics of conducting research or even conducting an actual, oh my gosh, I guess, critically evaluating sources or even the papers that they would be citing as part of this. Yep. And I've just given up. I don't argue with them anymore. I just simply say, all right, well,
Yeah. What's your ANOVA? What was the ANOVA rate on that? What? Thank you.
Now,
I remember what it stands for, but I remember that from my stats classes. So.
Hey, Don, when it says peer-reviewed, does that mean like if three of my friends I'm breaking into the Capitol with also went to that site?
No, Mr. Jericho.
Yes. But no,
Oh my
so
God.
for everyone that hasn't seen this movie, please go out and just, even with all of this, there's a lot we didn't touch on. There's a lot that stands on its own, and a lot of stuff you see here, you don't. You'll find out later that there's so many things that got its root in film here with this film. There and for the effects that they did with it, like you'll see some text in the air. I'm not gonna say anything beyond that because I want to leave some prizes for people. But when we see the text in the air, that was groundbreaking at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating to watch.
It blew me away. Like I actually paused it. I'm like, that is an outstanding device.
Yep.
To use to demonstrate. Oh well, one to make you question, like, okay, what the hell's going on at that point. But it also it draws you into the film to ask more questions.
Absolutely, and then, but again, like this, I did say it helped reinforce that as reinforce the legitimacy of the concept of the character as it is established at that time, which was wonderful. You don't realize how it's like, oh, wait a minute. And no, I won't be pairing this with Usual Suspects at the end, but it's still something that really, I mean, keeps on coming back to that, where it's like at the end, like look back, or you can do it with the Ocean's movies as well, the good ones, not the one from the 1967. But it's have you ever seen that one? It's horrible.
I tried watching it, and you got to understand, I am a diehard Ocean's fan. I love heist movies.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if you've read the Bad Guys books. I know the movie came out as well.
Oh, I know the Bad Guys. Yeah.
My daughter gets the books, and I literally read them while she's at school, so she doesn't know that I've been reading them as well, because I like to, she knows I'll spoil it otherwise. But anyway, no, I'm kidding. I just had to throw.
You are not kidding, but yeah.
But no, like so the Ocean's movies were huge to me, and I even love Ocean's 8. I think that's fantastic too.
Oh yeah.
I have a couple issues with it, but that's a different podcast.
I love it.
But no, I tried watching the 60s version a couple years ago, and I think I made it like maybe a third, maybe a half, somewhere in there. I couldn't do it. I just gave up finally.
Spoiler alert, it only got worse.
Oh, holy shit. I'm so glad I left.
Yeah, no, I watched the whole thing because I will finish things off. I will watch the whole thing. That's why I try to be specific with what games, especially what video games I play. Because I will play through a whole 30-hour game just to get to the end because I need to know. But with that first Ocean's movie, it's basically him and like a bunch of buddies out there wanting to get drunk and film a movie. They're drunk half the movie and doesn't make any sense and just kind of falls apart. The remake, it's also falls under. There are things that do well with the remake. Those do well. The Thomas Crown Affair remake, which another movie, which like you look back, oh wait a minute, oh my god, oh, and so which is another great movie that does dropping hints that throw you off. So yeah, the Pierce Brosnan one is great. The original with what's his butt is. Oh no! Look, they're going through another sand dune on a dune buggy again. So yeah, but all these things. I remember one of the articles about this movie. The only two other big movies that really did the non-linear storytelling like this were Citizen Kane and Pulp Fiction. That excelled at the non-linear to this point. I'm sure there are arguments made for other ones, but like those are absolutely. I mean, one as both two, I'm a huge Pulp Fiction fan. For the reader, I actually made my own 3 3/4 inch tall duo of Vincent Vega and Jules. Yep. So I've actually got made my own figures, my own G.I. Joe size figures of those.
Wow. Nice.
Yes. Oh, I know they're great. And,
okay. All right.
Yeah. No, you've seen the pictures. I've posted them up, so I'll post them up again later. But it's still some like those are only other times where they had that successful level of non-linear storytelling, and that's very much what this movie is. And by the time it comes all back together, you're like, oh, that is so good, just so well executed.
And like you said earlier, this movie would not work without that. The story would just fall apart.
Yeah, this movie only works the way it does. And that's it. They've tried multiple remakes other times, and this is very much only the way it could have worked. And I'm very happy for that.
Well, fantastic. Do either of you have anything else to add before we move to movie recs?
No, I've been taking notes from Professor Parker here.
Sweet.
I haven't been called out in a day.
I'll copy them later. No.
Yeah.
All right.
Tony? I'll cite my sources as Wikipedia and YouTube. I saw a video once and it was awesome.
Did my own
As
research
revealed to me in a dream.
Oh man.
I mean, that would work with this movie.
I had a bowel movement once and it just showed up halfway through and like, wow.
Oh my God.
It worked.
Some people vote based on those. Anyway,
it shows.
So you are the guest. If people liked this, what else do you suggest that they watch?
Actually, two movies I've already mentioned previously with the silent film era. Nosferatu is an absolutely wonderful horror movie as well. Basically, anything with Lon Chaney. The Red Death is great, as well as the original Phantom of the Opera.
Beautiful.
So those, because just stunning.
So for my double feature, I thought if you like things with cabinet in the title, you should watch Cabinet of Curiosities and then listen to all 8 of our episodes that we did with Alex Woodrow. All right, here's my real one. Identity. I fucking love Identity. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to leave it at watch Identity.
Damn. I need to rewatch that one. It held up when I rewatched it for the show, and that's probably been a year, 2 years ago. And I need to get my kid into more stuff because even this movie, Anyway,
Identity would also fall apart if you didn't tell it exactly as it's told.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Yes.
That's such respect for that writing and stuff like that. Again, writers, amazing.
All right, Don. Let's go with 288 movies today.
Jeez, I thought you would have gone with a year. So I'm going to start off with one that James knows I would probably never pick, even though I picked it before. The Witch, or The Vitch, however you want to pronounce it. I'm only mentioning Birth of a Nation because of the same ways in which they set tone with lighting and with shading. For those of you who are listening who haven't watched Birth of a Nation, go and just listen to the episode that we did on Birth of a Nation. Don't bother watching that movie. Edward Scissorhands.
There's enough in there that you don't have to watch the movie. You'll be fine. You'll get the gist of it.
The Cell. The original Frankenstein. I've got Memento, Big Fish. Oh my God, I wrote Birth of a Nation twice. That's how much I hate it. Broken Blossoms, which is another film where it's, you've got this idea of possession of a woman or a woman not being, having an individuality or any agency. It's simply you are property. And as a result, bad things happen.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, well, I was
the movie, not the concept.
No. Just read the summary. It's another D.W. Griffith. Hey, let's be really racist movie.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll do it.
But let's be really racist and sexist because both those movies have to deal with women do not have any agency, are unaccountable. Men are accountable for and responsible for women, or else bad things will happen. Now, to counter that, Klondike Annie. If you aren't familiar with Mae West, I just say start there. If you don't like her after that movie, I have no hope for you. Plus, this movie itself, Klondike Annie, broke so many, I guess censorship rules or censor rules that the movie itself, what survives, is not the original movie as planned.
Oh no!
So much was cut out, like the fact that. You could have men killing women in movies. The censors were opposed to Mae West's character killing her abusive husband. What they ended up doing was they cut the scene out of the movie and they just simply say she murdered her husband with a knife over the radio. That's all you hear is.
Ooh.
I'm sorry. You hear about it. You never get to see it. And she fought with the studio and with the censors to keep it in, but they cut it. And there was other stuff that was cut out as well that would have really slapped the face of misogyny.
Got something
which I guess was
I just remember about the movie, that Caligari. They were actually this is a movie where they avoid a lot of actual violence by doing it in shadow. This is one of the first times they were to do that as well. So sorry, they just popped in my head. Didn't mean to detract.
No. It's like even with blood rules with certain TV programming for the longest time, or even with married couples being in the same bed for the longest time. Can't do it on TV.
Yeah. And comic blood was always purple.
Yeah.
So it's like, can't have red blood, it'd be purple or black or something like that, where it's like, you know what it is, but you can't have it as. But that if you want to do a story about the CCA, Comics Code Authority, oh boy, that's me coming down with righteous vengeance and furious anger.
Yeah, as you should. So we got Nightmare on Elm Street. Any one of those first four movies would work. Joker again, as far as like, is it all in his head? Is it actually taking place? Silent Hill, Rashomon by Kurosawa.
Ooh.
And I say this in all sincerity.
Sucker Punch.
Predator. Ooh. No, Predator. Predator, because if you look at it through the lens of Dutch is the only one surviving this, it can then be a critique of mental health within the military, PTSD, all these things, and the fact that stuff never happened, and it was simply he snapped and killed everybody, or they all started fighting with each other. He's the only one who survived, and he made the woman tell the story about, there was an alien that did this. So if you look at it like through that lens of he's the only survivor and he gets to tell the story. The other one, that's it. That's it for me. But I would just ask you, Tony, since you are the guest, as James would normally say, bring it back to you. What are some other projects that you might be working on that you might have forgotten about or didn't mention? How can people contact you? How can people, see you in person?
Yep. Oh, yes. I will actually be at the Phoenix Comic-Con in a couple of weeks. From this recording, but last weekend in May, I'll be at Phoenix Comic-Con. I'll have a table there. Come on by, say hi. Love to hear your judgments. I'll be the guy with the beautiful blue hair. And
I was going to ask if it was still blue.
Mostly blue. It's kind of what's grown out is like darker blue. The other stuff is lighter blue, and it's amazing either way. But right now all my focus is on Medusa. So I've been doing commissions. Easiest way to contact me is I've got my website, TonyParkerArt.com. All my social media is either Tony Parker Art or Tony Parker Art 1. So Facebook is Parker Art, Tony Parker Art. Not that. That's a 1980s rap song, and we're not going back to that. But Tony Parker Art on Facebook and on Blue Sky, and Tony Parker Art 1 on Threads and Instagram. But with those, I post on a regular basis. I check messages on a regular basis, and I try to be very positive towards people. So, but yeah, right now it's Medusa. It's my baby. It's something I've been working on for I think like 5-6 years now in one degray or another, and I'm excited to get it out in the world.
Wow. I knew it had been a while, but I didn't know how long. Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, the funny thing is, it started off as the Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle, Washington, had a book called Monsters and Dames. And so every year, it'd be a prestige thing. If you get your thing in the book, it was very prestigious. And one of the years I was in was, I said, let's do something fun, and let's make the non-uncommon monster of the day. I'm like, let's do something. What if Medusa was a hero of modern day? Just like a one-off, like just a single image. Like, this would be kind of fun. So made her mask silver, and which they explain in the book that comes out in October. My book comes out on October 22nd.
Oh, cool.
So it comes out, but the pre-orders for comics, you can pre-order the book now through anywhere except for comic shops. And the comic shops, which I prefer, is available for pre-order on May 22nd to July 22nd, I believe. But it all started off as, it'll be a fun thing to draw, and I had a tremendous time drawing her, and then was waiting for scripts from another project I was working on, and I realized, wait a minute, what if I did this as a story? It'd be kind of fun because you always want to do your own thing. Like, so I started did a little 8-page story with it, and talked to my friends over at Dark Horse, like, hey, does this fit with anything like they have down the road? Because if not, I'd like to do something down the road. And they looked at it like, no, we want it now. I'm like, I can't do it now. I'm on something. Well, we want to do this. And because I was under contract for another on a different book. And so I was working on that, had a great time working on a book called Essentia. And so I was working on that, and on the off time, I was doing this. So that's part of the big gap there was when the day job, paying job at drawing comics, I'd be at home doing that. And then I hit a point where like, you know what, I've got to sit down. I've got money saved up. I've got to take 6 months to a year off and focus solely on this. And so I went through with the support of my amazing partner and my amazing family, was able to go through and paid for it all myself, finished everything off. Right now, the lettering's all done. The writing's all done. As of Sunday, May 5th, 2:10 p.m. West Coast time, I'm waiting for 3 more pages for amazing colorists to color, and it goes off. Basically, from then it goes off to post-production and printer, and it's just comes out October 22nd.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, cool. All right. I suppose that wraps it up then for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
Or are you?
I'm James Sabata.
Good. And
sorry,
you guys will be here next week on the Necronomicon.com.